In a grand house that looked like it had been lifted straight out of a magazine, everything sparkled. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. Polished floors reflected the sunlight streaming in through huge windows. And the furniture was so elegant that anyone who walked in might feel like they were stepping into a different world. It was a house where people noticed the expensive paintings before they noticed the people who lived there. And in the middle of it all was a young girl who often felt like she was invisible, the billionaire's daughter. Though surrounded by luxury, spent most of her days quietly moving through rooms that were bigger than some apartments. She had a soft face and curious eyes that seemed to take in everything but rarely attracted attention. While her family hosted guests, discussed deals, or entertained friends, she would sit quietly in the corner, sometimes with a book, sometimes watching the world outside the tall glass windows. She waited, as she always did, for someone to notice her, to include her, or to make her feel seen. The staff moved around her house with practiced efficiency. Chefs prepared meals that looked like art. Cleaners moved swiftly to make sure no speck of dust remained. And assistants attended to the billionaire's every need. But among them was one person who always stood quietly in the background, a woman who seemed to notice more than she let on. She was the nanny. The nanny was a quiet presence, someone who never demanded attention. She moved through the rooms with a calm grace, her hands gentle as she tidied, her voice soft when she spoke. She had been with the family for several years, and yet no one really knew much about her. She never talked about herself, never bragged, never seemed to want anything in return. But the young girl had noticed her from the very beginning. There was something in the way the nanny looked at her, not with pity or impatience, but with a kind of quiet understanding that made the girl feel safe. Most days, the girl and the nanny shared little moments that went unnoticed by others. The nanny would quietly adjust a pillow, just the way the girl liked it, hum a gentle tune while folding laundry, or leave a small note by her breakfast plate with a kind word. The girl treasured these small gestures because they made her feel seen in a house where attention was often given only to those who made noise, demanded it, or had status. It was not that the family was unkind. The billionaire was often away, attending meetings in different cities. And the mother, though busy with social events and charity work, tried to give her daughter attention when she could. But the constant movement, the grandeur, the focus on appearances often left the girl feeling like she had to wait for someone to notice her presence, even when guests came. The girl was often left in the background. She would smile politely when introductions were made, nod when people asked her how she was, but she quickly learned that no one really cared to listen. Conversations swirled around her. Laughter echoed, but it all seemed distant. She felt like a shadow moving through a house full of light. The nanny, however, never let her feel invisible. On mornings when the girl woke up feeling nervous or unsure, the nanny would greet her with a smile and a quiet "Good morning. Are you ready for today?" That small question, spoken gently, carried weight. It acknowledged the girl's feelings and reminded her that someone saw her not as a child to be managed, but as a person with thoughts and emotions. Sometimes, the nanny would sit with the girl in the sunlit kitchen while breakfast was being prepared. She didn't ask too many questions or offer unsolicited advice. Instead, she would listen. If the girl talked about her dreams, her worries, or even a small event at school, the nanny would listen and respond in a way that made the girl feel understood. She didn't interrupt or rush her. She simply gave her presence, which mattered more than anything else in a house so full of noise. The girl began to notice little things about the nanny over time. The way her hands moved gracefully when she worked, patience in her voice, and the quiet confidence in the way she carried herself. She had a presence that did not demand attention, but naturally drew it from those who paid attention. The girl often wondered what it would be like that, to be calm, strong, and quietly respected in a world where everyone seemed to shout to be noticed. One afternoon, the girl was trying to draw in her room, feeling frustrated because her sketches didn't look like she imagined. The nanny came in silently, looked at the paper, and said nothing for a moment. Then she quietly suggested a small change in shading and a new way to hold the pencil. The girl tried it and saw her drawing transform almost magically. She felt a spark of pride and amazement, and realized that the nanny had a talent for seeing what others could not. It was moments like these, that made the young girl start to understand that the nanny was someone extraordinary. Not because of fame or wealth, but because of skill, patience, and the ability to make others feel capable and seen. The nanny had a way of bringing out the best in people, quietly, without fanfare or attention. It was something the girl admired deeply, though she didn't yet fully understand it. Meanwhile, the house carried on in its usual rhythm. The billionaire would arrive late in the evenings. The mother would attend gala events, and the staff would prepare for the next day. Guests continued to come and go, often leaving before the girl had a chance to connect with them. But through all of this, the nanny remained a steady presence, a constant that the girl could rely on. She waited for no recognition, made no demands. Yet she became the anchor in the young girl's life. Some days were harder than others. The girl would feel the sting of being overlooked at family dinners or social events. She would watch the world move around her and wish she had the courage to speak up or stand out. But the nanny's quiet confidence rubbed off on her slowly. Watching someone move through life with calm and grace, without needing to shout for attention, taught her that being seen did not always require noise or bravado. It was during these quiet, ordinary moments that a bond grew between the young girl and the nanny. Not a bond of words, but of trust and understanding. The girl learned to look forward to mornings when the nanny would hum softly in the kitchen, or afternoons when they would sit together in the sun. She began to feel that maybe, just maybe, someone in this vast, bustling household truly cared about her feelings. The nanny's presence also reminded the girl of patience. She learned that life did not always move according to one's own schedule. Sometimes, she had to wait, observe, and learn quietly. The nanny never rushed her, never pressured her to perform, but gave her space to grow at her own pace. This taught the girl a lesson that no amount of luxury or attention could have provided, is that true value often came from quiet strength, patience, and consistency. As the days passed, the girl found herself watching the nanny more closely. She noticed the way she greeted the staff, how she handled challenges without losing composure, and how she seemed to have a solution for almost everything without drawing attention to herself. There was a rhythm to her life that seemed simple on the surface, but the girl began to understand that it took skill, intelligence, and a kind heart to maintain, even when the house was full of important visitors or bustling with activity. The nanny never lost her calm. She moved efficiently, quietly, and with purpose. The girl noticed how people, even if they didn't consciously realize it, followed her lead. If she moved through a room to adjust something, others would step aside naturally. If she spoke, people listened politely. It was a quiet authority, one that came from competence and kindness, rather than fear or demand. The girl often wondered about the nanny's past. Where had she come from? What had she done before joining this household? But the nanny never spoke of it. She didn't volunteer stories or seek sympathy. Instead, she focused on the present, on the people around her, and on the young girl, who had come to depend on her in ways she could not yet fully explain. One evening, after a particularly busy day with guests arriving and leaving, the girl found herself sitting in her room, feeling tired and overlooked. The nanny knocked softly on the door, entered with a small tray of tea, and sat beside her. They didn't speak much. The nanny simply poured the tea, handed it over, and sat quietly. In that moment, the girl felt a sense of calm wash over her. She realized that this quiet presence mattered more than any applause, any compliment, or any recognition she could have received from others. The young girl began to understand that life in this grand house would always have its noise, its hustle, and its constant movement. Guests would come and go, adults would focus on work and appearances, and many people would never notice her at all. But she also realized something important. She didn't need everyone's attention to matter. She had someone in her life who truly saw her, who believed in her in small ways every single day. And so, in the quiet, polished corners of the house, a relationship grew stronger. The young girl waited as she always did, but now she did so with hope. She knew that one day, perhaps, she would see more of the world reflected in the calm confidence of the nanny. And she knew that she could learn from her, grow from her, and maybe even inspire others the way the nanny had inspired her. In that grand, bustling house, filled with luxury and appearances, the quiet bond between a young girl and her nanny became a source of warmth, strength, an understanding that no chandelier or polished floor could ever replace as the days went by. The young girl began to notice more of the small, extraordinary things the nanny did. She moved through the house like a quiet observer, always alert to the needs of everyone around her. It was not the kind of attention that demanded recognition. Instead, it was subtle, almost invisible, yet it left a lasting impact on everyone she touched. The girl realized that this nanny seemed to have a talent for seeing what others could not. One morning, the girl was practicing her piano in the music room. The house was unusually quiet, with the usual hum of activity replaced by stillness. She struggled with a difficult piece, her small fingers stumbling over the keys, producing notes that sounded harsh and uneven. She grew frustrated, the corners of her mouth pressing together, and she sighed heavily. She was ready to give up when she felt the soft presence of the nanny behind her. The nanny did not speak immediately. She simply leaned slightly against the doorway, her eyes calm and observant. Then, gently, she suggested a small adjustment in posture and finger placement. The girl followed her instructions and tried again. Slowly, the music began to flow more smoothly, each note carrying more clarity and emotion. She looked up at the nanny, eyes wide with amazement, and the nanny offered a quiet smile. It was a moment of learning without pressure, guidance without dominance. This pattern continued in many parts of their daily life. If the girl struggled with her studies, the nanny would guide her patiently, breaking down complex problems into simple steps. If she felt overwhelmed by the expectations of her family or the intimidating grandeur of their home, the nanny would sit quietly, offering reassurance without unnecessary words. Each interaction was carefully balanced, giving the girl room to grow. While subtly showing her the path forward, the girl began to see that the nanny's skill was not just in teaching or guiding. It was in understanding people, their fears, their potential, and their unspoken needs. She watched the nanny correct a chef's presentation on a delicate dessert without embarrassment, listen to a housekeeper's worry without judgment, and soothe a nervous visitor with a simple, kind word. The nanny's ability to influence without dominating, to lead without shouting, fascinated the girl. It was something she wanted to learn for herself. The girl's admiration for the nanny grew deeper with each passing day. She started to notice how people naturally gravitated toward the nanny's calm presence. Staff members who had been impatient or quick-tempered became more composed when the nanny was around. Visitors who initially looked for grand gestures or impressive displays were subtly drawn to her quiet competence. It was as if the nanny radiated a kind of strength that could not be faked, and the girl was beginning to understand that strength came from something deeper than wealth or recognition. One afternoon, the girl sat with the nanny in the garden. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the stone path. Birds chirped in the distance, and the gentle rustle of leaves created a soft, calming rhythm. The girl asked the nanny how she had learned to be so calm, so confident, and so skilled. The nanny paused for a moment and then said quietly, "I have learned to listen more than I speak, to watch before I act, to understand before I judge. Strength comes from patience, and respect comes from attention." The girl listened carefully, absorbing each word. She realized that she had been trying to force herself to be noticed, to prove herself, in ways that often felt rushed or unnatural. The nanny's approach was different. She didn't need to shout to demand attention or to show off her talent. She let her actions, her presence, and her guidance speak for her. It was a lesson that went far beyond piano practice or schoolwork. It was a lesson about life, about how to move through the world with quiet dignity and impact. The girl began to emulate the nanny in small ways. She started paying closer attention to her surroundings, noticing the needs of others before asking for attention herself. She tried to approach her studies with patience, taking small steps rather than rushing. She even began to feel a new confidence in social situations, not by trying to impress, but by observing and listening first, just as the nanny had taught her. Meanwhile, the nanny's presence in the house became even more significant. One evening, a large family event was planned, with dozens of guests arriving for dinner and entertainment. The girl watched as the nanny moved through the house, coordinating the staff, adjusting arrangements, quietly guiding the flow of activity. No one seemed to notice her much, yet everything ran smoothly because of her efforts. The girl realized that the nanny's true skill was not just in teaching or guiding one person, but in managing the world around her with grace and precision. During the event, the girl felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. She was expected to perform a small piano piece for the guests. It was something simple, yet she could feel the pressure of expectation weighing on her shoulders. Her fingers trembled slightly as she approached the piano, and she felt a wave of self-doubt. It was then that she caught sight of the nanny, standing quietly at the edge of the room. Watching her with calm encouragement, the sight of the nanny reminded her of all the lessons she had learned: patience, observation, quiet strength. She took a deep breath, adjusted her posture as the nanny had taught her, and began to play. The first notes were shaky, but she remembered the guidance she had received and slowly allowed the music to flow. With each passing moment, she felt more confident, more in control. The nanny's presence was like a steady anchor, keeping her grounded. As the performance continued, the girl realized that she was not playing just for the guests or to meet their expectations. She was playing for herself, guided by the quiet support of someone who believed in her. The music began to carry emotion, feeling, and clarity. She could see the subtle surprise and admiration on the faces of some guests, though she did not focus on them. She focused on the music, on the moment, and on the steady, encouraging presence of the nanny nearby. After the performance, the girl felt a mix of relief and pride. She looked at the nanny, who gave a small nod and smile. It was not an expression of praise, but of acknowledgement, recognition of effort, growth, and courage. The girl understood that this was more meaningful than any applause or compliment from the guests. The nanny had taught her that real strength and confidence came from within, nurtured by guidance, patience, and quiet support. In the days that followed, the girl reflected on her experiences with the nanny. She realized that she had grown in ways she had not noticed at first. She was more patient, more observant, and more confident in her abilities. She had learned that being seen was not about demanding attention, but about understanding oneself and others. The nanny had opened a door for her, showing her a path that combined skill, kindness, and quiet determination. The bond between the girl and the nanny deepened further. They shared moments of study, music, and conversation that were full of subtle lessons. The girl began to anticipate the guidance of the nanny, appreciating the small gestures that communicated more than words ever could. She learned to trust herself and the lessons she had received, knowing that the quiet influence of someone who truly understood her was a gift that would stay with her for life. The nanny, meanwhile, continued her work without seeking recognition. She guided, taught, and supported not only the young girl, but also the household in subtle ways. The girl observed how the nanny treated everyone with respect and patience, regardless of status or importance. It became clear that the nanny's true talent was in her ability to see potential and nurture it quietly, allowing others to shine without overshadowing them. One afternoon, the girl and the nanny were sitting in the sunlit study, reviewing some music pieces for an upcoming small recital. The girl was nervous about trying a particularly challenging piece. The nanny watched her carefully, then suggested breaking the piece into smaller sections and practicing them slowly. The girl followed the instructions, and soon she could play the piece much more confidently. She realized that the nanny's approach was consistent across all areas of life: observe, guide gently, encourage, and let effort meet opportunity. It became increasingly clear to the girl that the nanny had a hidden depth. Her calm demeanor, her skill, and her understanding of people suggested that she had experienced much in her life, yet she carried no bitterness or arrogance. The girl wondered about the nanny's past, imagining stories of challenges overcome, skills learned, and wisdom gained. But the nanny never spoke of these things. She focused on the present, on the people around her, and on the lessons she could impart quietly. As the young girl continued to grow and learn, she began to feel a sense of anticipation. She knew that one day there might come a moment when the guidance she had received would be tested in a bigger way. She trusted that the skills she had learned from the nanny, patience, observation, confidence, and quiet strength, would prepare her for that moment. And she felt a growing excitement mixed with curiosity about how the lessons of today might shape the experiences of tomorrow. Through all these experiences, the girl realized that life in the grand, bustling house was more than just wealth, appearances, and social events. It was about the quiet moments, the subtle guidance, and the meaningful connections that were often overlooked. The nanny had shown her that greatness did not always come from recognition, but from the ability to inspire, support, and guide others with grace. By the end of this part of her journey, the girl had grown not only in skill but also in understanding. She had learned to see value in patience, to appreciate quiet confidence, and to recognize the power of guidance without demand. The bond between the girl and the nanny had strengthened into something profound, full of trust, admiration, and mutual respect. And although the house remained filled with guests, events, and endless activity, the girl now carried a sense of calm confidence. Days leading up to the big family event were filled with a mixture of excitement and tension. The young girl felt the pressure mounting. This was not just any event. It was one where influential guests, friends of the family, and business associates would be present. She was expected to perform a musical piece, and even though it was supposed to be simple, the weight of expectation pressed heavily on her small shoulders. Every time she thought about it, her stomach twisted into knots. In the mornings, she would sit at the piano and attempt to practice, but her nerves often caused her hands to shake. The music would come out uneven, clumsy, and far from the smooth performance she wished to deliver. The pressure of wanting to make her parents proud, of not wanting to embarrass herself, and of being watched by so many eyes seemed overwhelming. She sometimes felt the urge to hide, to pretend that the event did not exist, and to escape into the quiet corners of the house where she felt safe. Throughout this period, Nanny remained a steady presence. She did not offer empty encouragement or try to lessen the pressure with words of reassurance. Instead, she guided the girl patiently, focusing on the small, concrete steps needed to improve. When the girl stumbled over a section of music, the nanny would gently suggest a new fingering or posture, showing her the exact movement without criticism. When she faltered emotionally, the nanny would simply place a comforting hand on her shoulder, allowing the girl to gather her courage without feeling rushed. It became clear to the young girl that she could not handle this alone. She had learned much from the nanny over the past months, but now she faced a true test. For the first time, she realized that her growth would be measured not by small improvements in practice sessions, but by how she could rise to the occasion under pressure. She looked at the nanny one morning and asked, almost shyly, "Will you be there with me?" The nanny nodded, her calm eyes meeting the girl's with a quiet understanding. "I will be right here," she said softly. "Just focus on the music and trust yourself." In the days that followed, their practice sessions became more intense. The nanny helped the girl break down the piece into smaller segments, emphasizing rhythm, tempo, and emotional expression. She encouraged the girl to close her eyes and imagine herself performing for an audience. Teaching her how to visualize success, they worked tirelessly, sometimes for hours, but the sessions were never harsh or rushed. The nanny understood the balance between pushing the girl to improve and allowing her to grow naturally. The young girl also began to notice a change in herself. She was less timid, more confident in her movements, and more aware of her own abilities. Yet, the fear of failure remained, lurking in the corners of her mind. She could not shake the worry that something would go wrong during the performance, that she would forget a note, or that the audience would laugh or judge her. The nanny, sensing the girl's anxiety, taught her simple techniques to manage her nerves. They practiced deep breathing exercises, subtle stretches to relax her hands and shoulders, and visualization exercises to calm her mind. The girl found comfort in these routines, realizing that nervousness did not have to control her performance. The nanny's presence made her feel grounded, as if she had an invisible safety net supporting her every step. Finally, the day of the event arrived. The house buzzed with activity as staff members made final preparations and guests began to arrive. The young girl's heart raced as she dressed in her finest outfit, a simple dress that her mother had chosen. She barely noticed the sparkling chandeliers or the polished floors as she focused on the challenge ahead. She felt the weight of expectation like a heavy cloak draped over her shoulders. Backstage, the girl practiced her breathing, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. The nanny stood quietly nearby, offering a reassuring nod whenever the girl looked at her. "Remember, you have done this before in your own way. Trust your fingers, trust your heart, and trust the music," the nanny whispered. As the announcement was made for the girl to take her place, she felt a wave of panic rise within her. The audience was large, filled with people she barely knew, but who seemed to carry an invisible weight of judgment. She wanted to shrink, to run, to hide in the quiet spaces of the house. But then she saw the nanny, standing at the side, calm and composed. The nanny's eyes met hers, and in that simple moment, the girl felt a surge of courage. She knew she was not alone. She approached the piano, her fingers trembling slightly, and seated herself. The hush that fell over the room was almost deafening. She took a deep breath, recalling all the practice, all the lessons, all the quiet guidance of the nanny. She closed her eyes for a brief moment and then let her hands fall on the keys. The first few notes were tentative, shaky, but she reminded herself to trust in what she had learned. The nanny watched silently, her presence like a steady flame in the midst of the storm. She did not intervene or whisper instructions. She simply observed, offering confidence through her unwavering attention. The young girl felt that attention as a form of protection, a shield that allowed her to focus entirely on the music. As the piece continued, the girl's fingers began to move more confidently. Each note gained clarity, each phrase carried emotion, and she felt a flow she had never experienced before. The initial panic faded, replaced by a sense of purpose and control. She realized that she was not performing for the audience, not for her parents, and not for anyone else. She was performing for herself, guided by the quiet lessons she had absorbed over time. Halfway through the piece, a slight misstep occurred. Her fingers slipped on a chord, producing an unintended note. For a brief moment, panic threatened to return. But then she felt the presence of the nanny, steady and unwavering. The girl took a deep breath, remembered the practice sessions, and continued without faltering. She realized that mistakes were part of learning, part of performing, and did not define her abilities as she played the final notes. A wave of relief and accomplishment washed over her. She lifted her hands from the keys and opened her eyes, seeing the room in a new light. The audience sat in silence for a moment, as if processing the performance they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began to fill the room. It was warm, appreciative, but the young girl did not focus on the reaction. She focused on the feeling of having faced her fear, of having relied on her skills and guidance to succeed. The nanny approached quietly, offering a small smile and placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "You did well," she said softly. The girl felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear, not from shame, but from the deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude she felt. She realized that the nanny had been the true guide throughout this journey, offering support without overshadowing her, teaching lessons without demanding attention, and providing a calm presence that allowed her to shine in the days that followed. The young girl reflected on the event and what it had taught her. She understood now that confidence and skill were built gradually, through patience, guidance, and consistent effort. She realized that true achievement was not about seeking approval or recognition, but about trusting oneself and the lessons learned along the way. The nanny's quiet influence had shaped her into someone capable of facing challenges with composure and grace. The bond between the girl and the nanny grew even stronger after this experience. They shared moments of quiet reflection, practice, and conversation that deepened the girl's understanding of herself and the world around her. She began to see that the nanny's influence extended beyond music or household guidance. It was about character, about the ability to move through life with calm strength, and about the subtle power of quiet confidence. The young girl also noticed the impact of the nanny on the household as a whole. Staff members spoke of her guidance, visitors commented on her poise, and even the family began to recognize the value of her presence. Yet the nanny remained humble, never seeking recognition or praise. Her satisfaction came from seeing others grow, succeed, and gain confidence. Through this experience, the girl understood that waiting, observing, and trusting the right guidance could lead to moments of true achievement. She learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. She realized that true skill was nurtured quietly, with patience and care, rather than demanded through pressure or force. By the end of this chapter in her life, the young girl had gained more than musical ability or a successful performance. She had gained insight, patience, confidence, and a deeper appreciation for the power of guidance, mentorship, and quiet strength. The nanny had shown her that greatness often comes not from being the loudest or the most visible, but from understanding oneself, trusting in one's abilities, and allowing guidance to shape the path forward. The girl now carried these lessons with her, knowing that they would guide her through challenges yet to come, and that she had someone who believed in her quietly but completely. After the young girl's performance at the family event, life in the grand house settled back into its usual rhythm, but something had changed. The girl had gained confidence, but she also carried a new understanding of the quiet power of patience, guidance, and inner strength. The nanny had been her anchor, and now the girl began to see that the world held more surprises than she had imagined. The next challenge was approaching, and it would be a moment that no one expected. It started on a busy afternoon when the family was preparing for another high-profile gathering, this time with guests from influential circles. The young girl had been asked to play a more complex piece at the event, one that she had never attempted before. The thought of performing it was intimidating. She felt a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. The house seemed to hum with anticipation, the staff moving briskly to ensure everything was perfect. The girl, however, was focused entirely on the music she had yet to master. The nanny approached her quietly, carrying a folder with sheet music. She did not say much, just handed it to the girl and sat nearby. "This will be challenging," she said softly, "but you are ready to try. Take it step by step as we have practiced before. Trust yourself and trust your hands." The girl nodded, grateful for the reassurance. She opened the sheet music and began to play, but the first attempts were shaky. Her fingers stumbled, her mind raced, and she felt a wave of frustration. She looked at the nanny, who remained calm and observant. "Start slowly," the nanny advised. "Feel the rhythm, listen to each note, and don't rush. You can do this." With the nanny's guidance, the girl began to break the piece into manageable sections. They worked tirelessly, focusing on difficult passages, practicing them repeatedly until her fingers moved with confidence. The nanny's patience and quiet encouragement helped the girl push through the fear of failure. Each small success built her confidence, and the girl began to see that the piece, though challenging, was not impossible. As the day of the event approached, the tension in the house increased. Guests would arrive soon, and the performance was expected to impress everyone. The young girl practiced diligently, but the pressure weighed heavily on her. She feared disappointing her family and making a mistake in front of so many influential people. Yet the nanny remained a steady presence, reminding her to trust the work they had done together and to focus on the music rather than the expectations of others. Finally, the girl took her place at the piano, her hands trembling slightly, but her heart filled with determination. The room was filled with guests, their eyes attentive, their whispers quieting as she prepared to begin. She could feel the weight of the moment, the silent judgment of so many eyes upon her. She looked to the side, and there was the nanny, standing with calm assurance, offering silent support. The first notes were cautious, careful, but as she progressed, the girl began to feel the music flow through her. The rhythm, the melody, the emotion all came together as she let herself be guided by the lessons she had learned. She realized that she was not performing for the guests or to meet anyone's expectations. She was performing for herself, the quiet strength of the nanny's guidance supporting her. Halfway through the piece, a challenging passage appeared, one that she had struggled with repeatedly during practice. Her fingers hesitated, a brief moment of doubt flashing through her mind. She glanced at the nanny, who gave a subtle nod, her eyes calm and encouraging. The girl took a deep breath, recalled the practice, and pressed on. Her fingers moved with precision and confidence, hitting each note with clarity. She could feel the music carrying her forward, and she began to lose herself in the performance. The audience, initially attentive and curious, began to change. Faces that had seemed indifferent or polite now reflected genuine interest and amazement. Whispers of admiration started to circulate as the girl's skill and emotional expression became evident. It was a performance that drew attention not through showiness, but through authenticity, precision, and the quiet power of talent honed with guidance and patience. The nanny's presence remained constant, a silent anchor in the storm of performance. She did not interfere or offer spoken instructions, but her steady gaze and calm demeanor gave the girl the confidence to continue. She realized that the support she had received over time was not just about learning notes or techniques, but about developing the courage to face challenges, trust her abilities, and express herself fully. As the piece reached its climax, the girl poured her heart into the music. Each note carrying emotion, each phrase telling a story. The audience was captivated. Even the family, who had seen many talented performers before, were astonished by the depth, skill, and emotion conveyed by the young girl. It was a moment of awe, one that no one in the room would forget. When the final notes faded, a hush fell over the room. The silence was profound, as if everyone were holding their breath, processing the extraordinary performance they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the room, growing louder and more enthusiastic. The young girl looked up, her eyes wide, and saw the admiration and surprise on the faces of the guests. Her heart swelled, not from the applause itself, but from the realization that she had faced her fear and succeeded. The nanny stepped forward quietly, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. The words were simple, but they carried a lifetime of support, patience, and encouragement. The girl felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of relief, pride, and gratitude. She realized that this moment was not just about her performance, but about the guidance and mentorship that had made it possible. The event continued, but the memory of the performance lingered. Guests approached the girl with genuine admiration, asking questions and expressing surprise at her talent. The family, who had previously focused on appearances and status, now saw the true value of quiet guidance and patient nurturing. The nanny, ever humble, accepted thanks with a gentle smile, her satisfaction coming not from recognition but from witnessing the growth and success of someone she had quietly supported. In the days following the event, the young girl reflected on what had happened. She realized that the performance had been a turning point, not just in terms of skill or confidence, but in understanding the importance of patience, guidance, and belief in oneself. She saw that the nanny's role had been crucial, providing not only technical instruction but emotional support, encouragement, and a model of quiet strength. The girl began to approach other aspects of her life with the same mindset. She applied patience to her studies, observation to her interactions with others, and quiet confidence to situations that had once intimidated her. She began to understand that success and recognition were not the only measures of achievement. Personal growth, courage, and the ability to inspire others were equally important. The nanny continued to guide her, not with force or insistence, but with subtle instruction and quiet encouragement. The young girl learned to listen, observe, and act with intention, understanding that the lessons she had learned through music applied to every aspect of her life. She began to see that the nanny's influence extended far beyond the household, shaping the girl's character, resilience, and outlook on life. The household itself began to change in subtle ways. Staff members noticed a shift in the girl's confidence and approach, and they too were influenced by the example set by the nanny. Even the family began to appreciate the quiet power of guidance and mentorship. recognizing that true skill and character often emerged from patient nurturing, rather than loud instruction or immediate recognition. As time went on, the girl continued to practice, learn, and grow. She faced new challenges with courage, drawing on the lessons she had learned from the nanny. The bond between them strengthened, becoming one of trust, admiration, and mutual respect. The nanny's quiet presence remained a constant source of support, guiding the girl through moments of doubt, fear, and opportunity.